Willow Creek, located in the state of Virginia, was known as one of the most peaceful rural towns in America. No one locked their doors. Children rode their bikes through the streets. The scent of freshly baked cookies filled the air from the local bakery, and the church was packed every Sunday. But beneath this idyllic image lay a dark secret that no one wanted to see. When Eleanor and Richard Calloway moved to the town in 1975, they seemed like an ordinary couple. Richard worked as an electrical technician, while Eleanor made desserts at the town's beloved bakery. Everyone believed they had a happy marriage. However, over time, people began noticing oddities in Eleanor's behavior. She struggled to remember her days and frequently complained about exhaustion. At first, it was dismissed as a natural part of aging, but the vacant look in her eyes and her increasing forgetfulness soon became a topic of conversation in town. Yet no one dared to question what was truly happening to her. By the early 2000s, Eleanor had become more withdrawn. She was seen less often at the bakery, and in the mornings she would wake up with swollen eyes, looking utterly drained. She mentioned having strange dreams at night. In these dreams, she felt like a stranger in her own home, shadowy figures, blurred, moving faces, but she could never fully recall what had happened. One morning, as she looked in the mirror, she noticed small bruises on her arms. She had no memory of how she got them. When she asked Richard about it, he responded with his usual calm smile. "Honey, you're overworking yourself. You're sleep-deprived. Maybe you just bumped into something in your sleep." Eleanor had no choice but to accept his explanation, but the unease inside her continued to grow. One evening in 2020, the cashier at the town's small market was reviewing the security footage when he noticed something disturbing. Richard Calloway was lingering between the aisles, holding his phone at an odd angle. At first, the cashier thought it was nothing unusual, but when he took a closer look at the footage, the truth became clear. Richard was secretly recording women from between the shelves. The cashier immediately called the police. That night, Richard was stopped outside the market and taken to the police station, but no one could have predicted that this was only the tip of the iceberg. The police began investigating Richard's past. Surprisingly, he had no prior criminal record. However, reports of Eleanor's ongoing health issues raised concerns. This led to a search warrant for their home. What they found inside Richard Calloway's house would haunt the police for years to come. Upon opening his computer, they discovered hidden folders containing countless videos and photographs. At first glance, the files appeared ordinary. But as investigators examined them further, they uncovered a horrifying truth. Eleanor had been filmed while she slept. But even more disturbing, she was not alone in some of these videos. In several recordings, unidentified men were seen next to Eleanor's unconscious body. For over a decade, Richard had been recording Eleanor as she slept and secretly bringing strangers into their home, men he had met through the internet. As the investigation expanded, it was revealed that Richard Calloway had been involved in a dark criminal network for years. Further research uncovered that he had connections with over 40 individuals. Even more shocking, some of these people were figures of authority: police officers, teachers, soldiers, and firefighters. Willow Creek was devastated upon learning the true nature of those they had once trusted. Eleanor finally understood why she had always felt so exhausted, why she had trouble remembering her days, and why she always woke up with swollen eyes. But living with this truth was a nightmare of its own. In 2023, the trial took place at the Virginia State Court. Richard Calloway was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but he wasn't the only one held accountable. His accomplices were also brought to justice. Paul Henderson, 15 years in prison. James Walker, 10 years in prison. David Morales, 7 years in prison. Samuel Green, 12 years in prison. Willow Creek would never be the same again. The townspeople realized they had unknowingly lived alongside a monster for years. Eleanor immediately filed for divorce. Her children severed all ties with their father. She now lives in another town, trying to forget her past. But can one truly escape their past? Even years later, the town of Willow Creek could not shake off the shadow of this tragedy, and the people of Willow Creek lost their trust in one another forever. From the outside, Brooksville, Ohio, seemed like a perfect place. With a population of just 6,000, the woman at the grocery store knew all her customers by name. The library was the quietest spot in town, and the biggest event was when the local baseball team won a game. But no matter how peaceful a town appears, it can still hide dangerous secrets. On the night of September 25, 2003, this small town woke up to a dark reality. Lisa Thompson was one of Brooksville's most promising young people. She planned to attend Ohio State University and was determined to become a journalist who would change the world. But that night, her world changed forever, and Brooksville would never forget Lisa. Her story wasn't just a case of a missing person, it was the unraveling of a town's buried darkness. Lisa was walking home from school as usual. The air was crisp. The dry autumn leaves had gathered along the sidewalks. Though the streets were lively during the day, they became eerily quiet in the evening. Along the way, she chatted with a few friends, laughing and joking. Then, she continued walking alone. The town's lights were slowly dimming. As the night deepened, the streets of Brooksville grew even more silent. A man, walking his dog, later said he had seen Lisa pass by, but had he noticed anything else? That question was never answered, and right there, Lisa disappeared forever. That night, there were no screams. No one heard her call for help. It was as if the air had swallowed her whole. The next morning, her mother realized something was wrong when Lisa didn't come down for breakfast. Lisa never left without telling anyone. She went to her daughter's room. Opening the door, she saw that the bed was untouched. Her phone, wallet, and bag were all there. But Lisa was gone. A strange feeling crept over her mother. The untouched bed meant Lisa had never come home. At that moment, worry turned into panic. The police were called. People didn't go missing in Brooksville, but Lisa was gone. When the police arrived, the town's grocery store owner checked the security cameras. The footage showed Lisa walking from school toward the town center. But toward the end of the video, one detail stood out. A red Chevrolet was slowly following behind her. In a small town like Brooksville, everyone knew who owned what, and there was only one person in town who owned a red Chevrolet: Jack Monroe. But that wasn't the only unfamiliar vehicle on the streets that night. As the police analyzed the footage further, they noticed a white van driving down the same road Lisa had taken. The license plate, however, was unreadable. Jack Monroe was the town's mechanic. He was in his late 50s, his face lined with the wear of the years. People didn't talk about him much. Some whispered rumors about his past. They said he was too friendly with young girls, but Brooksville preferred to stay silent. After Lisa's disappearance, the police questioned Monroe. "Do you know Lisa?" they asked. "No," he said, but there was a problem. During a search of Monroe's garage, the police found a wooden crate. Inside it was a school jacket. The jacket was identical to the ones worn by students at Lisa's school. And in a dusty old notebook inside the crate, there was a page with Lisa's name written on it. The police searched Monroe's garage thoroughly, but they found no definitive proof linking him to Lisa. He insisted he was just a misunderstood man. The townspeople didn't believe him. The whispers about Monroe had now turned into real suspicion. But due to a lack of evidence, he was released, and Lisa was still missing. 10 years passed. Lisa's disappearance became one of Brooksville's most haunting tragedies. Her family never stopped searching for her, though their hope had dwindled. Then, in 2013, construction began on a new shopping center just outside of town. As workers dug the foundation, they unearthed a buried backpack. It was covered in dust. The contents had started to decay, but one thing remained clear. Inside was Lisa Thompson's ID and a pair of jeans, stained with blood. This was just the beginning of Brooksville's dark, secret resurfacing. The place where Lisa's backpack was found wasn't far from Monroe's garage, but it was too late. Jack Monroe had died in 2010. He had reportedly suffered a heart attack in a motel. Was Lisa's backpack and the blood-stained jeans connected to him? Or was there someone else still walking free in Brooksville? Was the town ready to face these unanswered questions? My name is Jake Larson. I'm going to tell you about the night I spent at that godforsaken bus stop. That night I learned what fear really was, the kind of fear that steals your breath, grips your heart, and drags your mind to the edge of madness. It all started on that dark, endless road in rural Georgia. Midnight had already passed. I stared out of the grimy window of my Greyhound bus, watching as the headlights cast flickering shadows of twisted pine trees. The road was swallowed in absolute darkness on either side. The bus was half empty. The only sounds were the driver's raspy cough and the whispering hum of the tires against the asphalt. Then, the bus came to such a sudden stop that I slid forward, hitting my head against the window. The driver turned his head toward me, his eyes blank, expressionless. "This is your stop," he said. His voice was cold, mechanical, like something speaking, not someone. "What?" I managed to choke out, but the word barely left my throat. The doors hissed open. I grabbed my bag and stepped off. As the bus's red taillights disappeared into the darkness, I looked around. No streetlights, no houses, no signs. Just the stop, a broken bench, a rusted sign, and a dark red sticky stain on it, almost like fresh blood. That was when something inside me screamed, "Run!" But I didn't. I should have known then. This night wasn't going to let me go. It all started that evening in Atlanta. I was heading to Savannah for work. The Greyhound ticket was cheap, so I chose the night route. Normally, I wouldn't take such a desolate path, but I was broke. The terminal was dimly lit and eerily quiet. A few passengers sat around in worn-out chairs, the coffee machine buzzing annoyingly in the background. The driver was bald, wore glasses, and didn't say much. When he checked my ticket, he didn't even look me in the eye. I figured I had hours left before my stop. I was wrong. I still don't know why he dropped me off in that desolate place. The wind hit my face as soon as I stepped off, cold, damp, like tiny needles. I clutched my bag and sat on the bench. The rusted metal pressed against my skin, but I didn't want to stand. My legs were shaking. "A car will pass by," I told myself, but my voice was swallowed by the night. No one came. Then I heard it. Tick, tick, tick. Software rhythmic, but growing louder. At first, I thought it was the wind. But no, the sound was something approaching. In the pines, branches cracked, as if something heavy was pressing down on them. My breath quickened. I scanned my surroundings. A shadow moved in the darkness, fast, blurry, but there. I pulled out my phone. The battery was nearly dead. I switched on the flashlight and the shaky beam illuminated the sign, Miller's Cross. I had never heard of it, but that red stain. I stepped closer. The smell hit me, sharp, metallic, sickeningly fresh. It was blood, but darker, wrong. I reached out to touch it, but stopped. My heart pounded so hard it felt like a machine hammering in my chest. And then the tick-tick-tick stopped, replaced by a wheezing sound. Deep, guttural, almost human, but not quite. Something struggling to breathe, and it was close, too close. I slung my bag over my shoulder and stumbled onto the road. "I'll find someone," I muttered, but my voice was shaking. I walked faster, then I ran. The wheezing followed. I heard footsteps squelching in the mud behind me. I didn't look back. I knew if I did, I would stop. And if I stopped, it would be over. The wind howled in my ears. Ice filled my lungs. But that sound, that thing, didn't stop chasing me. Just as my breath was running out, I saw it. A gas station. My legs were numb, but I didn't slow down. I slammed my fists against the glass door and stumbled inside. Behind the counter stood an old man. Thin, glasses perched on his nose, hands trembling. He looked at me. Fear flickered in his eyes. "Help, something," I stammered, barely able to breathe. "What did you see?" he asked, his voice calm, but his jaw clenched. "I don't know. A sound. Something was following me." I couldn't finish the sentence. The old man fell silent. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a shotgun. "Miller's Cross?" he asked. I nodded. His face darkened. "Then it's still after you." "What?" I croaked. But then a shadow passed over the glass door, tall, twisted, human-like, but not human. My heart shot into my throat. "Is it locked?" I whispered. The man nodded, but his eyes never left the door. Something slammed against the glass. A crack formed, but didn't break. The man raised the shotgun. I waited in that gas station until dawn. The old man handed me a cup of coffee, but his hands shook so much the liquid almost spilled. "Miller's Cross," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "Closed 20 years ago. Bus crash. The driver lost his mind, shot every passenger one by one, then himself. The bodies rotted for days before they were found. He fell silent, his eyes staring into nothing. But something stayed on that road, he finally continued. People hear things, footsteps, breathing, sometimes screams. I clenched my fists. My fear twisted into anger. Then who the hell dropped me off there? I demanded. The old man didn't answer. Instead, he turned his head toward the window. Outside, in the dark, tick, tick, tick. Faster, louder. Then another slam against the glass. The crack deepened. The old man cocked the shotgun. Don't go, he warned. But I couldn't stay. I found the back door. I ran. Mud swallowed my shoes. Branches tore my face. The wheezing followed. But this time, I heard something else. A whisper. Jake. It knew my name. My heart almost stopped. I found a car. An elderly couple picked me up and drove me to town. At sunrise, I called the bus company. Check my ticket, I shouted. That route wasn't running last night, the woman on the phone said. The driver dropped me off, I yelled. Sir, she said, her voice trembling. We had no driver last night. That route was retired years ago. The last man to drive it died 20 years ago at Miller's Cross. The phone slipped from my hands. I haven't slept since that night. In every shadow, every window, I hear it. Tick, tick, tick. The wheezing, the whisper. Jake. My door is locked, but last night I saw something in the mirror. Tall, twisted, watching me, smiling. And I know, one day it will find me. Maybe tonight.